Welcome to the Ultimate Landscape CEO podcast. Today's guest is the Executive Vice President, Brodie Brunner of Weathermatic. This is a fascinating conversation on not just irrigation in the industry, but on technology. We talk about, you'll learn about how Weathermatic has transformed itself from a hardware business making pipes and old school controllers and valves, et cetera, into a tech-enabled business where it sells not only the hardware, but the software to run the hardware. It sells tech-enabled controllers. It actually gives them away. I'll tell you about that in a second. And has really become an added value business to its clients. In 2008, it really even accelerated that change for Weathermatic, where it really went into supporting maintenance companies and not just selling product. You learn about how they transformed their whole culture, their workforce, as from an old school production company into an integrated hybrid company that does software as well as hardware. You learn about how they focus on they're helping their contractors really develop irrigation service as an enhancement. We get into percentages and what the rates they think that you should charge. And we talk about turning irrigation into a profit center. We get into where Weathermatic has really focused on removing the time obstacles, the wasted time, the inefficiencies, and removing the money obstacles from making your irrigation division more high tech, and the training that they have developed and now supply to their partners. Very interesting. Brodie gives the best answer that anyone's ever given to predictions on where this industry is going at the very end. We talk a lot about technology and tech-enabled companies. And so we touch on not just the irrigation, which you'd expect, and not just how Weathermatic does it, which you'd expect, but we really go far and wide here and end with some great learning points that you'll want to pay attention to as an owner of whatever business you own, presumably a landscape business. But we have people listening, as I mentioned on the podcast, far and wide, a huge audience. If you don't know about me and my website and the work I do, you can visit jeffreyscott.biz. You can sign up for my newsletter there, where I put out weekly a lot of great, useful, free information for the listener. All right, let me bring on Brodie, and welcome to the show. Brodie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeffrey. Good to be here.
So, Brodie, why don't we start with tell the audience a bit about Weathermatic and your current size business model.
Yeah. Weathermatic started in 1945. So right after World War II, part of that baby boomer. Weathermatic was a baby boomer in its own right. So 78 years ago, the business started. It was started by a gentleman named Max Snoddy, and he was a gentleman that was started in actually Michigan, installed the sprinkler systems for the Ford family there in Michigan. Moved down to Indiana and eventually landed in Dallas in the 40s. And so he was the inventor type that really didn't find the products out there very good. So he made it himself. So imagine any of you listening today, if you're in the landscape business, that your own crews made the sprinklers at night and installed them during the day. That's what he was doing. And eventually he sold factory. Word got out about his system, and he sold factory dealerships, like franchises, literally. I was looking at one this past week, a manual, and for $3,500, you got a business manual, a design manual, a installation manual. And so he was literally taking the postman, the mechanic. They joked there was an undertaker who was already dealing under the ground. These people from totally outside the industry would buy a Weathermatic factory dealership franchise. They would come to our headquarters in Dallas, and They would leave 3 weeks later, having been trained up with all their manuals and their franchise, and they would start selling irrigation systems. And so we did that for a number of decades, and then the industry kind of evolved into wholesale distribution, and the factory dealership program kind of phased out over that period of time, and that led us right up to when myself and our majority owner CEO Mike Mason came to the business in the mid '90s, and I started as an intern in 1995. So quite an evolution. In that time, we assumed ownership of the business from that founding family, and so here we are today.
You're saying
almost 30 years later.
You're saying a different family bought the business from the founding family.
Right. Yeah. So when Mike came in, just to be transparent, the founder that started the business in 1945, he passed away in 1987. And the transition there after his death in 1987 from when we came in 1995 was rocky. It was bumpy. And so when we came to the business, frankly, it was more like a turnaround situation. So we were resurrecting a pioneer of the industry, and it had its challenges. If any of you come into a business that maybe was transitioning generationally, or was just in a rough spot, the industry, if any of you were around then, one of the dynamic things about the industry is you go from the 80s to the 90s was the advent of plastics, and it was happening across industries. But in irrigation, it was hugely impactful because everything that made you a good brass or metal manufacturer did not necessarily translate perfectly into being a good plastic injection molder. And so really what for our business that meant was reinventing virtually every product line. And so when Mike and I got into the business, we had our hands full.
Before you take us through the history, let's come to the present tense. Tell the audience what the business is today, then we'll go backwards.
Yeah. So this is the kind of the remarkable part of it, is today, the majority of our, or the highest portion of our revenues and profits is from software, which I just got through talking about metal and plastic and manufacturing. And here we are, we have teams full of code people that are writing code and software for managing water. So that's the huge transition. If I was just to describe our business in a nutshell, think of it in three layers. Layer one being a manufacturing business. So we design and manufacture irrigation components. This is controllers, valves, sprinklers, sensors, nozzles. We design and manufacture those. Then we layer on top of that a software as a service business. And that software as a service business is where our customers are able to control their water online with mobile apps and technology. That's the software piece. We even have a third level of our business that's called managed services, where we use the software and the hardware, the equipment, to manage water for national portfolios. Every large bank, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, there's Truist, others, they actually engage Weathermatic to manage the water across their national portfolios. And we partner with their landscape service providers to help them achieve their water management goals. So that's the evolution of our business. It used to be, frankly, in the 1940s, an old world manufacturing company. Today, we're doing software as a service and even managing water using our technology for Fortune 500 companies.
So how many employees do you have?
Yes, we're right. It varies a little bit seasonally, but it's between 100 and 150.
Okay. So you're not huge. You're large, but not.
No, when we came to the business, we were about 300. And we've 10x the size of the business, but we have kept the team tighter. We had a manufacturing philosophy that when we came to the business, that you make every nut, you make every bolt, and you do that because you believe in the quality and you can control what you can control. And if you do it yourself. And that was right at the time, if you think about the mid 90s, that globalization was happening. And we found that we needed to engage in that. So our supply chain and our vendor suppliers, we went global. Mexico, South Korea, Southeast Asia, China, throughout. And as we did that, we found that we were able to really narrow our focus. And what we went throughout the business and looked at was, what do we do really well? And let's do that. And then what are the things that we're not world class at?
Yeah.
Let's find somebody that's world class at it and let them do it. And the result of that was we didn't need as many people.
Yeah. You took the Jack Welch approach.
Yeah.
If it's core to the business, do it in-house. If it's not, outsource it.
That's simple. And it's been wonderful for us to do that. But you have to really look in the mirror and say, what are we good at? And let's be not just good, but let's be world class. Let's be a leader in that.
How do you differentiate? Let me speak on behalf of landscape contractors across the world, because we have an audience that spreads across the world. I just spoke in New Zealand at their annual conference. They zoomed me in, but they're probably listening right now, and they heard me on this podcast. So for landscapers everywhere, why would we choose Weathermatic? What's the thing that you do uniquely beneficial? So it's unique to you and it's beneficial to the user.
Yeah. I think for professionals, we're a professional brand. And what's happened in our industry is, I mentioned that transition from brass to plastic. So things got more affordable. Irrigation systems are everywhere. They're at homes and businesses all around. As part of that, most brands have gone down the route of big box retail. And in going that big box retail route, I'm talking Home Depot, Lowe's, and the like. And I forget the name of the one in Australia. There's throughout the world, right? Big box retail. But with that, what you've had is kind of almost a dumbing down of the product, because the emphasis at retail.
I think you're going down a rabbit trail. I'm sure you're going to come back to where I'm at, what I was asking, but just give me, kind of summarize, what do you do different and better than the top other couple choices? We don't have to name names unless we need to.
Yeah. Well, what we do really well is we make a high quality product for the professional. So if you go through any of our product lines, you're going to see the dimensions of our plastic, the grade of our seals is made towards an institutional commercial client, because going back full circle, we don't sell to the big box retailers, the Home Depot, the Lowe's. And so it's very clear to our engineers, designers, our manufacturing team, who their customer is. And it is that professional, that landscape professional, not so much your neighbor who doesn't know any better, that's just looking for a cheap piece of plastic. Ours is that. So we do that very well. The other thing that I think we have really done uniquely is that element of our business I described, where we're excellent at equipment and hardware manufacturing, but we have also developed a strong expertise in mobile applications. Mm-hmm. And it is that combination of hardware, software with excellent service and training and support. That whole combination, I think, is what the industry needs right now to elevate ourselves in terms of how we manage water for our clients. So I think that's what's unique. Most of our competitors are in they're where I described us years ago, where they're just manufacturing companies putting products in cardboard boxes and shipping them. And it's kind of like people go install them. We're looking at business solutions and how do we combine hardware, software, service in a way that.
So can you give me an example?
Can do that. Yeah, absolutely. So we found that landscape companies, just in interviewing them, talking to what are your challenges, their number one challenge is not water. Their number one challenge is labor. And I'm not telling you anything that you don't know for sure. Labor is the number one challenge. And so we looked at the labor challenge through the lens of water and irrigation. And we said, okay, tell us, what are your irrigation challenges? They said, well, the irrigation tech is our hardest person to find. They don't grow on trees. We can't just go find them and hire them. When we do, they're expensive. And so we looked at that and we said, well, how are they spending their time then? If that is the precious commodity is the irrigation tech time, how are they spending it? And we got under the hood and we looked at it and we found, you know what? They're not being very efficient. They're driving around town a lot to go turn dials and push buttons. Yeah. They're fighting fires that could be done online. And so what we looked at is we said, we need to build a program such that we call them partners. We have partner programs that our partners get out of the insanity of driving around with their most valuable people, burning gas, which is expensive, burning their time, which is even more expensive, and get out of that, get everything online so that their finite amount of time, and we have KPIs for this, their finite amount of time should be spent delivering value and service to the customer that generates profit and growth for our partners. That's what should be happening. And the absence of technology has really resulted in most companies in our industry not taking advantage of this huge opportunity in water. And so what are those KPIs that you help your partners manage? Yeah. So what we look at is first of all, just big picture. If, let's say, Jeffrey, that you were a landscape company, one of my first questions to you would be, do you measure your irrigation revenue as a percentage of your landscape maintenance revenue? And most companies don't. When I kind of help them do the math, I find that irrigation as a percentage of the landscape revenue is typically single digits. And if we really do the math, for a lot of them, it's negative, meaning it's not only is it not accretive to their growth and profits and sales, they're actually losing money in their irrigation services division. So in terms of a KPI, what we set is that irrigation should represent at least 20% of your landscape maintenance revenue, 20%. We have some partners that have exceeded 30%, but 20% is a good baseline. Yeah.
Just to be clear, 20% means you don't have irrigation only clients, but sort of as an integrated irrigation division.
Yeah, I'm speaking for a full service landscape company that has an irrigation division when I talk about that KPI, right?
But no, I understand that, but we're excluding, hey, I've got an irrigation only set of clients. We're excluding that. When you're saying 20 to 30%.
Yeah, absolutely. For your irrigation only, it's 100%, right? And so it's different set of KPIs for that group that is an irrigation only type of business.
20 to 30%. I like that. What are your other KPIs?
Well, the other ones that you want to look at is what are your margins? We know that our cost of labor has increased, cost of materials has increased. Cost of gas is increased. So you have to look at yourself and say, have I increased my billable rates, right? And I know it's something that you speak about because it's something that you can't fall asleep to right now. You got to wake up to that and adjust that. And we find that since irrigation is not the primary business for a lot of our partners, that they sometimes forget to get either their time and material. More of them are building kits for replacing a valve or a sprinkler and setting those up in their business software. However they're doing that, though, that can commonly be neglected to where it's not uncommon for us to see gross profit percentages at less than 30 or 40%, when the reality is in irrigation, it should be like a second enhancement division, and your margins in irrigation should exceed 60%. For our partners that have kept up with where they need to be, we're seeing them commonly north of 65% in terms of margins.
What do you see as the hourly rate or the realized hourly rate of labor?
Yeah, so for irrigation techs, this varies quite a bit regionally, but it's obviously a number to look at. It's all over the board. In some parts of the country, I'm seeing $50 an hour. Others, I'm seeing $150 an hour.
So what are you recommending is what I guess what I'm asking.
Yeah. I think it is. You do have to index it with where you are, and you have to be cognizant of your
not to $50 an hour though. Let's not index
exactly.
it that low.
Yeah. So I do want to caveat that it is, you need to index and know where you're living. Are you in rural middle America? Are you in a metropolis on one of the coasts? So that matters because the cost of your living, what you pay your people is still relevant and in context of everything. But as a general rule, I think that companies in our industry have been reluctant to cross the psychological $100 an hour barrier for irrigation techs, but we're seeing more of them doing that, and we're encouraging them to do that because if you're honest about what your cost is, you need to be getting that level of recovery to be able to take care of your people, to retain the people and do that. So $100 and north is something that it's a pill that the industry needs to swallow and not be embarrassed about it.
If I turned off the microphone, which I'm not going to do, but if I did, what would be the actual number you'd be telling me that people should be charging?
I would like to see 125 to 150 is what I would like to see.
Yeah, exactly. I tell people now that 150 is the new 125 or the new one.
Totally agree.
And you have to, instead of trying to, you have to find this elusive tech who's going to be good. You have to pay a lot more and help them earn a lot more. I believe you're a big fan, as I am, of upfront pricing, unit pricing, fixed pricing for services. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you also teach your partners, quote unquote, how to set that up. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we think is so much of our industry is going towards using software, using technology for automation and efficiency. And pricing should fit right in with that, right? And so we think that the next leg of efficiency and automation is when your apps talk to your apps. And that means that our software for irrigation should be talking to your business software that you're using to do your invoicing and that type of thing. Because now they're doing all the work in the background. And so when you have consistent and stable pricing structures that can be shared across your applications from a technology perspective, now when you're doing your irrigation inspection, imagine this for a moment. You've got a tech out there who is using an iPad. That's what we recommend with an ice case. So you've got an iPad out there. They press zone 1, the water comes on. There's a broken sprinkler. Guys are shooting up in the air. Take a picture. This is all inside our mobile app. When they mark broken sprinkler on our mobile app, that mobile app will know that a 4-inch sprinkler has a price of $50. Now, they didn't have to go in and pick out, here's the fitting, here's the this or that. They just picked 4-inch, and it drew from that kit that included everything. So they had that $50 item. Now I'm going to finish zone 1. I've marked my issue. I've taken my pictures, which, by the way, you can do your programming at that moment. Now it's built my proposal in the background. So when I go through all of the zones of the irrigation system, I'm finished with my inspection, but I'm also finished with my proposal. Nobody back at the office has to take my chicken scratch notes and try to make sense of them, re-enter them into a computer, and then eventually get them out for invoicing. It's been a horribly messy process in our industry, and we found that to be ripe for automation. And so that's where we've built that inspection proposal software into our software, and we've made it where our software will talk to your business software, so that all of that is happening in the background, and your people in the office in the field are doing what they do best and making you money at the end of the day.
Is that open API, or is that something else?
It is. Yeah, exactly. It's REST-based open API. And, so we work with QuickBooks and Aspire and Boss and the normal business software out there are all going to cloud, right? It's not, it's not something that just sits on your computer. It's in the cloud. The beauty of it being in the cloud is it talks to other cloud-based applications, and they're handshaking and sharing the information that they should. And that, again, our industry has been a little bit slow to adopt technology, I'll say, but more and more companies are doing that. Yep. And now, as you look at it as a business owner, the landscape industry, you're like, okay, I got a software for this, a software for that. The cool part is when those start talking, now we're leveling up even at a whole nother level. And that's where the automation efficiency kicks in. So there's synergy when you have software and technology that talks to each other. And that's a real focus for us in that regard.
You told me offline that your company looks to remove time obstacles or time waste and money obstacles. And so I'm not sure what that means, but so tell me what that means. And this was for us. It's a quick backstory. Whenever we came into Weathermatic, I said in the mid 90s, we developed and patented our first smart controller based around the science of evapotranspiration in 2001, introduced it in 2004. That was before the iPhone. iPhone came out in, I think, 2006. But so we knew one day that mobile technology would be important, especially for managing water. What we didn't, what we didn't quite anticipate is that the water bill, the water utility, was something that people were just it's kind of like they say, death and taxes. It just happens. You just close your eyes and pay it. Yeah. And so the adoption of smart water technology was much slower than we thought. And, not a lot we could have done about that, but that was just a reality. As we say, I'm in Texas, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And for a lot of property owners, it's just not that broke. It's not a focus for them, right? And so what has now evolved is water is the fastest growing utility expense in America. The EPA says that for many properties, as much as 70% of the total water is used in the outdoors, not indoors. So electricity, primarily outside. You want to save water, you got to go outside. And so that's been a huge opportunity with Fortune 500s and others that are like, hey, we've got our sustainability. Now there's a term called ESG. And the only way they hit their goals is through water. And if you ask them, okay, if most of the water is outside, who manages that? They go, well, I think it's the landscape company that does that. So this has been a huge opportunity that has arisen
certainly in my time in the business. But even with that being the case, we find that landscape companies look at it, and let's say they're managing a portfolio of 100, 200, some of them 500 or 1,000 controllers. Just think about that portfolio. And they're looking at it and saying, I don't have the time to go sell hundreds of smart controllers. I'm not in the business of selling electronics. My customer says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it is broke for them because they're looking at it and saying, I don't have the people resource to drive around and babysit all of these controllers. And so Weathermatic and our partners looked at it and said, how are we going to solve for this? We can't go sell them one at a time. We don't, it's just not something that's doable. So we actually found that our partners can go out to their properties and say, I'm not here to sell you a smart controller. I'm going to make an investment in our relationship by upgrading your technology so that I can deliver you enhanced water management services. And they're like, well, what does it cost? No, you don't understand. It's like my truck and my mower and everything else is my irrigation operating system. It's in my normal monthly services, and there's no money out of pocket to you. So that's what our partners are communicating. They're not selling, they're presenting an investment, and it freaks people out a little bit. They're like, wow, I've never heard this from a landscape company. You're actually going to invest in my property. And so they present it that way, and they're able to because Weathermatic puts up the capital. We've literally deployed now tens of millions in capital for our partners to be able to put the technology on their customers' properties. And by doing that, they're able to deploy much faster without selling. And so that's been a big component of it. The only other challenge we ran into is they're like, well, if you're putting up the money, Weathermatic, then we can put them out, we can do it in the next 6 months. But, oh yeah, labor is my biggest problem. I don't have people on staff to go put up 500 or 1,000 smart controllers. And so they look back at us and said, Weathermatic, you have a team that does that. We manage those national portfolios. So we pivoted that team, and now they go out and install for our partners that need to put out 500 of them over the next few months. And so we solved their labor problem. So we put up the money, we put up the labor, and now we hand them the app and they can go use it. It's been quite an evolution.
What's the payback period? So if you're doing that, if you're financing that, how many years do I have to pay it back? What's the interest rate on that?
Yeah. So it's nothing down, no interest. So that's the first part of the answer. The monthly cost of our control system that includes the smart controller, we communicate via cellular versus Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi we have found to be problematic. People change; they don't want to give out their passwords, especially in the commercial world. So we use cellular rather than Wi-Fi. But anyway, the smart controller, the cellular communication, the service plan, the warranty, which covers lightning, theft, vandalism, technology obsolescence, all of that wrapped together, depending on the zone count, is somewhere between $29 and $49 is that cost over a 36-month period. But that's the equipment, the software, the service. We actually got we call it a bundle. I got the idea from Chick-fil-A. I've got 3 teenagers at the house. They always want a number one, which is the chicken sandwich, fries, and drink. I love being able to order number one. So our customers they don't have number one, but they order a 16, a 24, or 48. Those are our equivalents, which are zone counts, right? And so you as a landscape company can say, okay, well, on this property, I need 2 16s and a 24. On this property, I need 148. And you get everything that you need in the box. And
so 2 assumptions here.
Yeah.
The contractor starts saving money with this, more than $49 a month or whatever that number was. And the client's not going to fire the contractor for at least 36 months. So how do those, tell me about the second one first, and then tell me about the first.
Yeah. So we did a big thing when we got this technology down from like 5,000 a controller. We used to sell, we had the forerunner to our current technology called SmartLink was called Valcon. It's at like Universal Studios. all the roadways in California. Those were like $5,000 or $10,000 controllers. But it's, we looked at it and we said, that's not going to ever go mass market at that price point. So we got our price point down to around $1,000, which is great, radically better than $5,000. But you still would have to sell it at $1,000 and mark up and all of those things. So we said, okay, we're going to take that 1,000 and spread that out over 36 months. But when we did that, we knew that our partners were not under 36-month contracts, right? In fact, most of them have 12-month contracts, but with a 30-day out. So effectively, they're under a 30-day contract. So what we knew that we had to have a safety net or backstop for them, so they're not worried at night, oh, I can only put the Weathermatic at the site that I know will be there forever. So what we did was we gave them language in their contracts that says, in the event of cancellation, the property will keep the smart controller, but we, your professional, will remove our monitoring device, which is that cellular air card. So it's a clean split that way. And then we allow our partner to move that cellular air card just to another property that they manage. And we give them a brand new smart controller to go with it. Right now, $149 is that, well below our cost. And so if they get canceled, it's no harm, no foul. They're leaving the property better than when they got there. In fact, if they get hired back, which happens sometimes, they'll just throw on a new air card because they left the controller there. And some of them will charge a cancellation fee of $149 because so that way the canceling property just paid for the new controller on the next property that they take that air card to. So that's worked really well. Our partners have not found that. Most of them have retention rates that are 90% plus or minus. And so it's not like that happens every day. That would be painful for us if it did. But for our partners, they're able to have that level of retention. We're happy to be that safety net for them. And so they're not worried about it.
Do they find that the buyer facility, whatever it is, does this act like glue that keeps them retained?
Very sticky because one of the things that they're able to communicate is like our warranty. I said it covers lightning, theft, vandalism. So they're presenting this up front and saying, hey, we're going to make an investment into our relationship. People love that. And so they say that. And in fact, as long as we're in a relationship, as long as we're maintaining your property, if anything happens to that smart technology, we will be responsible for that. So if there's a lightning strike 5 years from now that's beyond anyone's control, we're going to be responsible for that. And they're able to do it because our warranty is part of that service plan that goes on through the life of their management of the property, which could be 5 or 10 years down the road. And so that stickiness of the warranty is a big part. And I always encourage the account managers, whoever's having a relationship with that property, water should be part of your regular reviews and your really your agenda with that customer. Because remember, it's the one utility that you're managing for them. And our technology has reports and charts and graphs, and our inspection reports I mentioned have pictures of not only things that are broken, but think about water is a second enhancement division. You should be offering water management enhancements. I've never seen a perfect irrigation system. There are opportunities for you to be demonstrating that as well. And so when you do water right, it will ultimately make you more sticky and irreplaceable. And we are even advocating that our partners get into scheduled maintenance. Think about this for a moment. It's not something we get to do a lot in our industry, but hopefully we're changing the oil in our cars and trucks every 5,000 to 7,000 miles in a 30, 60, 90,000 mile checkup. That's normal and regular. Businesses do it for their air conditioning systems. So why not, as landscape professionals, we recognize the irrigation system is a mechanical and electrical network that needs to be maintained. So why don't we recognize the life cycle of that equipment and say, you know what, those sprinkler nozzles, those thin pieces of plastic, they are putting out twice as much water after about 5 years. So what if we get on a replacement cycle every 5 years? We're going to change all of your nozzles. And guess what? The seals, the diaphragms, the solenoids, they have a usable life. I know because we've tested all of them. At about 7 years, you're good. But 8 to 10 years, you're in the danger zone. And so when they have one fail, you don't just need to replace one. You need to let them know the reason why this irrigation failed, this component, is because it was beyond its designed life cycle. So this winter, we need to budget for changing all of them because they're all outside of their life cycle. So that's very efficient.
Do you guys and gals, do you come in and teach the contractors how to actually do you teach their techs how to actually do the upselling?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a key part of it. So when we partner with companies, again, this goes back from, we can't just put a product in a box and say, hey, good luck with it, Jeffrey. What we do is whenever a company partners with us, and they don't partner with us by buying one control system. Most of them are buying 100 or greater because they're saying, okay, I've got to get my entire portfolio online. Let's take the first chunk of that. Usually it's around 30% of their portfolio. So they'll get started with that. When they do that, we assign them a partner advisor that loads all of their properties, all their pricing, all their people into our system. We also assign them a technical advisor that goes, this is a different person. They go out in the field and teach them installation and inspection with our mobile app and all of that. And then we have a third person who is the marketing consultant that builds their flyers, their brochures, sketch art video, social media campaign, and as well their contract document updates, like the cancellation clause I mentioned earlier. All of those pieces come together. So there's three facets: the kind of the partner business integration, the technical in the field, and the marketing. That is why we call it the Premier Partner Program, because again, I can't just say, hey, Jeffrey, here's a good idea. And
does that marketing person also teach selling techniques?
Commonly, the marketing person is focused on the marketing materials. The partner advisor, one that's kind of the business advisor, they're the ones who is sharing the best practices in terms of how do you approach this value proposition with your client to win in that regard, because that's important. We have presently about 200 premier partners around the United States. It's a good chunk of the top 100, top 150 type of companies. And I will say, when I look at, if you say, who came up with everything you're talking about today, Brodie, I don't say, well, we're just Weathermatic, we know everything, we're the smartest people. I would tell you those 200 companies have really, I would name them as 200 co-founders of this business approach for using technology and building a successful irrigation division. That's what I would credit.
I have a new question for you, but I have an old question. I don't want to forget either. My old question was 50, or what did you say, $48 a month? So
49 to 49 a month. Yep.
How much money does somebody save by doing this? But we can come to that second. My question that just came to me is, it's a Shark Tank question. How come you don't have more clients than more premier partners? Because it sounds like a great idea. I'm going to be Mark Cuban here. It's a great idea. Why don't you have, 5,000 partners? Well,
it's our goal right now is to bring on 500 new partners over the next 3 years. So we're aggressively working towards that.
How come so slow? Again, Mark Cuban question.
It's, believe me, that's what keeps us up at night. We think we have something really special, and it should be going much faster. I will tell you that the drag or the governor of our speed is not competition or need. It's one, awareness, as always. The marketers, challenge there is one, awareness of a solution, and two, I would say that when I talk to a typical landscape company and they look at the different initiatives in their business, they have limited bandwidth, and it's common for them to be concerned, well, I'm doing good just to cut the grass or whatever it might be. And so the companies, I can tell you those 200 that we are partnered with, they have figured out a way within their management teams to get margin in their lives and businesses so that they can take on a very lucrative and profitable opportunity that we bring to them. But so many companies are just living day to day, and it's a fight.
You're fighting awareness. You're fighting that people don't understand the upside, is what I'm hearing. And you're fighting that other people are dealing with labor and all their other parts of their company. It's a distraction. I suppose, though, the change in laws around the country is only helping you. So
yeah, we know this ends well for our business just around water. I mean, I think it's over 15 states now are requiring pressure regulating sprinklers, for instance. More and more are requiring smart control technology that water's based on the weather versus based on just 10 minutes a zone or 20 minutes a zone. So from the regulatory environment, that's a huge driver. In corporate America, the whole ESG and sustainability is driving a lot of landscape companies to actually call us now and say, hey, the guys at CBRE or JLL, these property management companies are telling me I've got to do smart irrigation here. Help me with that. So the kind of the macro level forces are going to drive our industry. The labor piece, I would tell you, again, where we thought water was going to be what really brings the value to our business, it's been labor more than anything. In fact, we obviously our technology, and this goes back, I'll answer that question you had, Jeffrey. If our cost is $29 to $49 a month, what's kind of the payback for a landscape professional? It should be the first month, because if you think about it, what does it cost you to do a truck roll?
Give me how many dollars? What's their dollar savings or dollar earned extra per month?
Yeah. So if you look at a given that 29 to 49, this is going to vary a little bit seasonally, and so it's a little safer to look at it on an annualized basis than monthly. It gets a little choppy, but at the end of the day, when we've measured this in detail with our partners, we find that their costs from us relative to their return that they get is somewhere between 4 to 8x. So whatever that 29 to 49, 4 to 8x, which is comprised of the trip savings, right? They're going to save.
Tell me in dollars, just so we're really crystal clear. Tell me in dollars what they save or earn.
Yep. Yeah. So if you look at the annualized cost of our solution at 29 to 49, annualized cost is going to be, 300, call it around $400. Okay. So $400 a year from a cost perspective, you should be getting 4 to 8 times back that amount from using our technology, because you're going to save on the truck rolls. You're going to increase your irrigation billables using our inspection app and the different practices that we're going to implement around scheduled maintenance. Plus, your freed up time with your team is going to be repurposed to actually go and sell more irrigation enhancement.
So I'm just going to give you some feedback here.
Yeah.
I'm going to be Mark Cuban again.
Please.
I would think the savings should be larger, 10 times. And I would think they actually are if the person implements all the ideas you've just mentioned in the last half an hour. And so I would think, to make it more attractive, I'm giving you a little marketing tip here, I guess. I think it should be 10 to 20 times. Maybe it's just 10, but 10. And I think it should be including everything you just spoke about and helping them implement all that, because 4 times savings almost doesn't quite seem worth it. But I think the savings are probably more. Yeah.
No, Jeffrey, I think if we were being real about it, I think that the 10 or 20 is very, if you do everything that I've said, that's very achievable.
Yeah.
I'm sensitive to, and this kind of goes back to why do we not have, thousands of partners right now today?
Yeah.
There is some concern that landscape companies have about execution risk. And so I'm always of the mindset of under promise, over deliver. And
Sure.
So when they are telling me, and maybe thinking what you're thinking, which is, hey, this should be 10 or 20x that cost, I'm mindful that, hey, let's say there is some execution risk, that we don't just come out of the gates perfectly. We should still hit the 4 to 8 and be happy with that. So, yeah,
that's a very politically neutral way to say you're undertrained labor, and I think it's a big issue, especially with integrated landscape irrigation companies, especially smaller ones, where you hire in the tech or two techs, but you don't actually have someone who's qualified to train and oversee them. Like, that's the issue. Maybe that's what you mean.
Well, sure. And that's our advisors. That's our partner advisor. That's our technical advisor. So we've kind of looked at it and said, you know what? A lot of our landscape companies, and these are not our typical partner is 5 million or north. I'd say the average is between 10 and 20 million in landscape maintenance. Those size businesses, but frankly, even our partners that are 30, $50 million plus.
What's the floor? Just so people listening.
Yeah, I would say our smaller partners are around 2. I don't know if 2 million annually in landscape maintenance. I can't think of one offhand. There might be that's less than 2 million, but generally it's north of 2. Most are north of 5. Average is 10 to 20. But again, we have some that are 30 and 50 million. And even in those organizations, it is normal and regular when we encounter them that they do not have a position. Some of them do, that is called a director of water management. So not head irrigator or, that, but director of water management, or some of them have given it, vice president of water management. So it's a title that is taken seriously. It's a position that holds weight similar to their head of operations or head of maintenance. So they're making water management a formidable, respected division in their company. And that is happening more commonly. But again, when we walk in, that position doesn't exist. And it's really just a group of irrigation techs. And so we put that on our back to be that leader, the advisor with the KPIs, with the plan, and help alleviate that execution risk, so that the likelihood of them getting 10 or 20x off of their investment with us is most likely at that point.
Okay. Hey, I have one last question for you, but it's a big one.
Yeah.
So your company back in 2004, 2000, you made the shift from a product hardware company to an integrated company that, to a service company, if you will, and software and service. And you made the transition, presumably, from old school to new school, right? You said you're down by your employee base is in half, but I bet not the same 150 from, 20 years ago. And so you really had to go through some culture changes. You had to drive it. You had to deal with resistance, overcome it. And in a way, what you did back then is what landscape companies are having to do today. Like, we're right in the middle of it, where I need my employees to be, not only computer savvy and software savvy, but tech savvy. And as a company, I've got to be able to start integrating technology, the easy, I don't want to say the lazy, but the almost lazy, is the automotor, or as an example. But I think it's other examples there's a lot of other examples, really, the more I think about it. But they're going to start accelerating. And so landscape companies have to go through the same transition that you guys went through 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So do you have a couple lessons learned from that, which probably was traumatic for your company back then?
Yeah, it's one of those things. I've been at the business 28 years. I started here as an intern, by the way. I joke it's my internship that never ended 28 years in. But you hear terms like innovate or die, get comfortable being uncomfortable, and you really have to embrace that mindset of what got us here is not going to get us there, right? Yeah. And so we looked at that culturally as a old world manufacturing business, as you just said, that needed to that was based largely going through the Great Recession in 2008, based largely on new construction, that whole industry. We were about 80% in that and 20% maintenance, and we flipped it. And now we're 80% based on retrofit, services, software, and 20% of our profit is derived from the new construction piece. So that was strategic. It was a point in time that we felt enough pain. They say when the pain to change is greater than the pain to change, or when the pain to change is greater than the pain to change the same, that's when you change. And we had that pain in 2008. We said, no more. We're going to draw the line in the sand. We're going to make the hard decisions. We're going to invest the right money. We sold off some divisions of our company. We had a drip division of the company. We said, you know what? Extruding drip is less lucrative and less strategic than us writing mobile apps. I mean, those are the kind of decisions we were making in our business. Yeah. And so we aligned the business. We didn't just talk it. We invested in it. We built the team around it. And we, even though we're talking today about, manufacturing and hardware and technology, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that any of the success we've had ultimately comes down to our people. So that is true in the old world. It's true in the new world. That, I would say, is a constant. And we build our business around what we call the 3 C's, which are character, competency, and chemistry. So if Jeffrey, you were coming to, what's that?
From a know-how perspective, that's a gutsy move. Yeah. And you've got to bring people in that you probably don't even know how to manage. I mean, that's how do you hire?
Yeah. Huge change in that regard. But again, when we were lining up our people, our current team, and those that we knew that we needed to add, we asked those 3 questions every time. Do they have the character? Honesty, the golden rule. Do they have the competency? Meaning that our accountants need to be good at accounting. Our code people need to be good at code. Our product designers need to be good at CAD and design. So is their character good? Is their competency good? And then lastly, do they have the chemistry within our team? Because even if they're good at the first 2, but they're jerks and nobody wants to work with them, or as Mike Mason, our CEO, says, if I don't look at you and smile because I know that you are a great team member, then that's a deal breaker. So those 3 have really been our guiding light: character, competency, and chemistry. And when we were looking at reshaping and building our team, we measured against those 3. And when we hit on all 3, now we have an employee that's there for 5, 10 years because we know that fit is there. And we learned that lesson the hard way. We had some people that maybe competency, they were great, but the chemistry piece was totally missing, and they weren't able to be effective.
But let me ask you, so you've integrated hardware and software just like my iPhone is that same magic integration. That's got to be a hard product to steer to fruition. How did you?
Extremely that whole there's something in the technology world called M2M, machine to machine communication, where you have you have software, you have hardware, and you have firmware, and getting those integrated was something monumental. I'll never forget the first time I was at our headquarters in Dallas, and we were able to sit in our conference room and press a button on our laptop, and we've got a large front lawn. We pressed the button on our laptop and we saw water come on out in the front lawn. And that for us was pivotal in the life of our business and our careers, because we knew that if we could sit in our conference room and press that button and see the water come on, that we could do that hundreds of thousands times over. And we truly could manage the water for national portfolios and entire landscape organizations. And so that was pivotal. Happened to be a funny story. Later that week, I flew from Dallas to Phoenix, and you can obviously get online on the airplane. And so I was testing our software, and I was playing with it on the airplane. And it struck me that here I was at 30,000 feet pressing a button in the sky and making it rain down below it. And I was like, okay, this is magical that we're able to do that. And so I'll tell you, there's an element of foresight. We put a RJ11 phone jack in our controller in 2004, before the iPhone existed, based strictly on the thought that we're going to want to talk to this. We had read that mobile was going to happen, so we built kind of the pipes in place, and then we set about the work. That was in 2004. We did not release our online product until 2012, 8 years later, not because we weren't ready, but because we were all carrying Nextels and stuff that wasn't smart for the most part until about 2012. So the gate on our speed has been the adoption of mobile as a whole, and certainly within our industry. But now I go to a typical landscape company, and it's pretty regular that guys are carrying iPads. And so the speed at which we are growing and that our partners are adopting our technology is just, it's going through the roof, because I'm not that resistance to technology I'm seeing come down radically because they're using it to book their time for payroll, and they're using it for navigation and all of these things. So I'm finding it to really accelerate. So I think our innovations as a manufacturer, where we had to take hardware, make it talk to software, and go mobile with it. Now I mentioned the next leg is that integration with other technologies. That is that speed is accelerating rapidly, and the adoption by our green industry customers is accelerating rapidly as well. So that's a beautiful thing. And as our growth and profits is happening, we're able to invest more. And so it is snowballing in that effect, kind of like microprocessors. I forget, what is it, the math on how quickly they doubled. That is starting to, every few months, right? It's starting to happen in the green industry, and that's what's really exciting to us. But it has been a monumental lift to come from where we were. I would say it would have been easier if we were just a startup that started from scratch.
Oh, yeah.
But here we were, a 50-year-old business with all these product lines, and we are in 85 countries. We got a global customer base. We have all of this. And inside of that, we've got this incubator, which is software as a service and managed services. But while that history was certainly it brought a lot of baggage and a lot of things to work out. It also paid the bills that allowed us to invest in what would be next for us. And I encourage anybody listening to look at it that way and say, hey, we are who we are today. Let's be thankful for that. Let's be thankful for where we are. We're blessed that way. And then say, where do we want to be? And go about the effort, the planning, and be intentional about how are you going to get there, and you won't get there alone. Like I said, I credit 200 other founders, meaning our other partners, to get us to where we are, and they'll be more joining that to take us to places we can't imagine.
I would say, back to Shark Tank, I think Mark Cuban would conclude not to invest in your business too capital intensive with all that financing you're doing. Do you have outside investors helping you with that? Who's financing you to finance your clients?
Yeah, we have our own funds. We have a financial partner that does the processing, and we also have brand ambassadors. These are companies that have looked and invested into our business. So we have a number of sources that, because frankly, the tens of millions that's been required and will be required going forward, it takes a bit of a village, and frankly, we have opportunities every day. We could just our recurring revenue, just like landscape businesses, our recurring revenue is quite significant. Yeah. And we have a lot of options there. Our strategy has been to retain control of the company and to only bring in strategic money into the business, in the sense that these are people who have a vested interest in our success. Gotcha. We don't want investors for the sake of money. That there's too many strategic investors that would love to help us grow. We view ourselves as ones that we need to be organizing the capital and aligning the capital at a rate that will never slow down our partners. And we've been able to, like I say, we have a couple hundred, we've been able to achieve that. And we think we can continue to, achieve that. And our business, I don't make any apologies. It's quite profitable. And so that will help self-propel it by itself.
That's good. So Brodie, two final questions. Number one, I need to deal with a conspiracy theory in the irrigation industry. Are you up for that?
Hey, let's do it.
So, and someone mentioned this, sort of offhand, a client of mine in a peer group meeting 4 years ago. After 2008 and the smart controllers are taking off, he's like, the suppliers of these controllers could just take over our accounts and make us unneeded. And I'm sure you must have heard that before. You guys are actually doing some national accounts. And so is that a conspiracy theory you've heard before? What do you say to that?
Well, one thing that I tell, I think that could happen. So I don't completely discount that as a conspiracy theory in the truest sense. I think here's what I know is that what I said earlier: water is the fastest growing utility expense in America. It is a finite resource, especially in urban areas. We bring in a lot of growth, and people don't bring water with them when they come to cities. So for the rest of our lives and careers, the importance of water, the cost of water, the regulations around water, that's only going to increase. So Make no mistake, water will be managed. And so the answer to your question is, who is going to manage it? And if I am a business owner, a service provider to a property, and I elect not to offer water management services, that's a void that somebody else is going to fill. And so to the extent that our industry, our green industry, is not providing solutions, the property owners, be it residential, commercial, whatever, they're going to find another solution. And so the answer to the question that you ultimately ask has not been fully answered yet. But what I'm telling you is we have an opportunity as an industry, as a green industry, to be leaders. I'm on the NALP Sustainability Council. We're developing best practices for water, and we want our industry to stand up and lead and get out ahead of this, so that our the customers of our industry, the property owners and managers out there, don't have to go look to Silicon Valley or some third party to get their water managed, but that instead the right people to manage it is actually the green industry. We know the plant water soil relationship. We know what it should be. And so if we will step up, then that conspiracy theory never comes true. If we don't, and we say, I'm going to do it the way I've always done it, and we don't truly manage the water, then the void will be filled. And so that's the, it's not that question has not been answered. I will tell you, for our 200 premier partners, their customers are not looking anywhere else. They're saying, hey, that partner came, invested in my property. They manage the water. We trust them, but we're able to verify it from the reporting they give us. They're not going in, their clients are not going anywhere else, not only for water management, but even their total landscape services. So, if you hear that again from somebody, Jeffrey, I would flip that back around and say, hey, are you offering a solution? Are you filling the void? Because if you're not, and you're not being intentional about it, then the answer is yes, somebody else will. And what that will look like could be, what that provider will look like could take a lot of different forms. I'm seeing a lot of different activity outside of our industry that could could move in, but there's plenty of opportunity if we'll just get our act together, frankly, as an industry and align our businesses around managing water. We'll make more money. It's the one utility we manage, and we'll be efficient, profitable. It's a beautiful opportunity. We just got to do something about it.
So my final question for you is, give me some predictions, not so much for the irrigation industry, because we just spent a lot of time talking about it, but for the listeners, so landscape, green industry in general, give me a couple predictions you have.
Yeah, well, some of them I've already said. I think labor doesn't get better. Labor gets harder, and automation becomes more and more important. I'm bullish on everything related to technology and automation in the outdoor space. I read something that said every business is a technology business. And you might say, yeah, that's true, but not for the green industry companies. But I actually think when we in the green industry look at ourselves in the mirror, we need to see a technology business, which is really weird to think about. I'm used to thinking about, plants and mulch and grass and water and sprinklers and stuff. We need to look in the mirror and say, we're a technology company. And so I think the winners in the green industry are going to be those that embrace technology, and they're good at adapting and deploying technology in a way that will deliver value to the customer. The number one question that I get from service providers, not service providers, from property owners and managers, the number one question I get, they say, we love your technology, but we don't, who knows how to actually use it? And when I can point to landscape companies, they're like, oh, great. I'm so glad that you have partners out there. But I think that's what's going to become more and more important is for the service is for companies to be using technology and information. We're in the data age to be able to secure the accounts, because people are hungry for data. They're hungry to see technology being used. And I think that our industry has traditionally not been real good at that. But my prediction is that the younger companies in the industry, the ones that are owned by 20-something, they're digital natives like my teenagers are, they're going to be very good at that. And so I think for those of us that have been in the industry 10, 20, 30 years, we're going to be very intentional and catch up on the deployment of technology. And again, look in the mirror and say, I'm a technology business. The ones that do that are the ones that will absolutely win. So that would be my primary prediction is we as an industry, the winners and losers will be defined by those that embrace technology and are good at deploying it effectively. That's that might sound obvious to some, but I think it is something we all need to take to heart.
So I'm in complete agreement with you. And I totally agree that we should look at ourselves as technology companies. And I do think we'll get competitors that will come in that are technology companies, but putting that aside, let's talk about this for just another minute. So first off, I'm going to give you kudos. Best predictions I've had on my podcast, and I ask almost everybody for their predictions. What can a landscape company do today that's only moderately tech affinity? I'm looking for an adjective for the word affinity, tech savvy. What can they do today? Give 2 or 3 recommendations, because you've got 200 partners. Some probably aren't quite worthy of being called a partner, and probably others are really great at it. I'm just, there's going to be a variation. So for those that have a long way to go, what are some basic steps they can take that you've seen to become more tech savvy?
Yeah. No, I know where you're going with that. Yeah. So I have found that a lot of this comes down to leadership. And if you look at the owners, general managers of the companies that have embraced technology, you as the owner manager cannot be the exception to it. You can't say, well, I built this business 20, 30 years ago and I'm still printing out my emails because I don't like to get on my computer and read them or whatever it is. I think it has to be the opposite. They need to see, they being your entire team, needs to see that you are embracing technology at every opportunity, just to make the point of how important technology is. And so that would be the first thing I would tell you is, if you're a leader in the business, you have to lead in the way you do technology. I wear an Apple Watch Ultra, and I have some other watches that I like maybe better, but this is a reminder. Anybody that sees me knows I have the latest tech, and they are viewing me as a tech guy. And anyone listening that is a leader in a company, they need to think of you as a tech guy. Yep. And there cannot be exceptions to that. So that would be one, is the businesses I see, our partners that are really winning at tech, they do it throughout their lives. They are embracing technology. So it is an attitude and a mindset that you apply across everything that you do. So I would speak to that at the vision level. At the kind of strategic and tactical level, I think you have to look at it and say, okay, what are the core business processes that happen? Payroll, timekeeping, managing water, go down the list and say, how are we using technology on all of those core processes? And if the answer is we're not, then something is broken. If the answer is we're using a spreadsheet, then something is probably broken. And you might not have heard that before, but we view spreadsheets as not a good thing. We develop stuff in spreadsheets just for quick and dirty, but more and more, if there's a spreadsheet for it, there's an app for it that's a lot better than the spreadsheet. And so you need to look at those core processes, find the right software, the right partner, make sure that software is based on an API, that you're in the right ecosystem, so that you choose the right software that will talk to your other software. And now you're building your business on a platform of technology that will be the stable ground that you can grow on. Because I've seen businesses make bad technology decisions. They had good intentions. They made bad technology decisions. And so it was one step forward, but 2 steps back. And so you really have to be strategic. You got to talk to people in your peer group. You've got to invest the time. Don't make it impulsive. Invest the time, do it right, build that foundation, and then you're putting yourself in a position to where you've got something sustainable. I've been doing business long enough that I don't want to do anything that's not sustainable, frankly, because that's a waste of time. So take that view of technology. I say that knowing technology changes, right? That's the nature of it. But you can make some core basic decisions, both from a vision level and strategically and tactically. If you're intentional about it, if you do your homework, you talk to your peer group, then you're going to set yourself up for success as it relates to technology. And everything I've just described doesn't cost hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to do. That's getting your mind right, having the right attitude, and just being resourceful, which is probably how you were successful in business to start with. It won't be any different in adopting technology.
I've told the story before. I remember when my dad brought computers first into our landscape company, our pool company. He literally said, I don't know what we're going to be doing with these things, but he said to managers, if you want to keep your job here, you're going to learn how to use these. Otherwise, within 3 years, you won't be working at the company.
Smart guy. Yeah. He said, that's what I'm talking about. A leader sets the tone. And it's funny because I talk to some leaders in business that they say, you know what, I'm not going to be that guy in the ivory tower that makes this independent decision and pushes it down on everybody.
Yeah.
And then they all push back and it doesn't get the adoption, because technology is all about adoption, right? And I understand that perspective. But to me, the adoption of technology, the implementation and execution of technology, that is one of those core tenets to a business today that is a non-negotiable. Yeah. So the tactical details in how do we use it, how do we build our process around technology, that requires collaboration and engagement to gain adoption. And you should absolutely have a big tent for that, and everybody's in it, and we're all making it our own. So that I'm completely good with. But as a vision and a core value to a business, it's a non-negotiable the way your dad did it. And that's the only way to make that happen.
Technology would almost never be agreed upon in a consensus fashion. Your field techs having to plug stuff in, no. The only way it would be consensus is if you've already turned over your leadership team and they're all young and yelling for it.
Yeah,
so
you're exactly right. I run into this on in our business. I'll go into a partner, the owner, the leader has said, hey, we're embracing technology. Weathermatic is our partner. It's our irrigation operating system. And sometimes they'll have old school dudes that, are kind of like Ford or Chevy guys and say, oh, I don't like the Weathermatic, I like this. And the owner has to step up and say, you know what? This isn't a Ford or Chevy deal. This is this is about our company. And we're going to adopt what's best for our company. I don't care about the brands. I care about the process, the outcome, and the profit that's going to come from this. So take off the Ford or Chevy. This is about us, is really, really the way you have to look at that.
Okay. I like what you said. I wrote it down about is the owner the exception? Because I see that in so many areas. Yeah. And a lot of it does have to do with software, but also following proper estimating and sales processes. I see it a lot.
I see it all the time. And if you're that owner who is the exception, I would tell you, one, look in the mirror and own that and say, okay, what are the steps I need to take, and be humble enough to look around and ask others, say, hey, what do I need to do to step up my game? That would be one. Two, if you're like, I'm not that, then maybe you need to elevate somebody else in your business to that leadership level, and you be more of a board member advisory level. There's nothing wrong with that. And so maybe there's that. Or if neither one of those works, you go to your people, and one of our core values is humility. We don't know everything. You go to your people and say, hey, guess what? We're going to be a technology leader. I'm not the best at technology. I'm not going to pretend to be who I'm not. I wasn't raised with an iPad in my hands like others have, but I'm embracing it. I want to be part of the future, and you guys help me out. There's nothing wrong with that level of humility, and I think people actually appreciate it.
Brodie, this has been a great dialogue. I really appreciate you spending time here and sharing your thoughts.
Absolutely enjoyed it.